takes a moment.
Yep. So welcome everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited about tonight's webinar. As you know, these are three physicians who served in Gaza. I think all three of them served twice during the last 2 years. These are heroes in my mind. The fact that they put themselves in harm's way to go help people is really extraordinary. So I'm just going to start, let's see. Let me just share this slide here. Julie, can you see it?
I can see it, yeah.
So we are delighted to have with us Dr. Mark Perlmutter, Dr. Mimi Syed, and Dr. Feroz Sidhwa. And we're going to start with me, Dr. Syed. So you can read here. She's the assistant clinical professor. She's joining us from Washington State. You can see when she served in Gaza in August to September and then December at Al-Aqsa and Nasser Hospital. So I'm going to stop my share. And let's see, Mary, I'm going to add a spotlight. There we go.
There.
So Dr. Sayed, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. And we thought we'd start with you and ask you if you could share your experience working at the hospitals in Gaza.
Yeah, it was horrific. It was not something I was prepared for. I have a training in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, so trauma is not new to me. It's not foreign to me. So I've seen pretty horrendous things in my career. But what I witnessed in Gaza was quite different than what anyone would witness in any time in their career. The sheer number of children with violent crime, with violent trauma, was just astounding. There's so many things that are completely destroyed in Gaza. As soon as you get into Gaza, you can tell that things have been kind of systematically destroyed. Everything around you is rubble. When you enter, I entered through Kerem Shalom much later than Mark and Feroz, but and that's through Jordan. And so everything around us was completely apocalyptic, destroyed to the ground. Children were walking around unattended. I went in both August and December last year, so I kind of saw both ends of the temperatures, both extremes. And there's no electricity, there's no sewage system. The healthcare system is completely destroyed. And then when I got to the hospital, the very first day, it was the minute I arrived at Nasser Hospital the first time in August, and mass casualty incidents just started pouring in, and most of them were children. I witnessed, about more than 80% of my patients were children, young children under the age of 12. And you see injuries that are not common patterns that you would see in children. And we've all talked about this. We've seen children with single gunshot wounds to the head, to the chest, to the neck, and I've talked about it extensively in media as have my other colleagues. But just the number of children that we saw and the lack of resources as a doctor, I had to smuggle things in, things like laryngoscope that I need. I need those things to do my job. And that's kind of the first step in stabilizing somebody. Those were all lacking when I went into Gaza the first time and the second time. So I was forced to kind of hide them in my clothes and bring those type of things
Wow.
in. Yeah, so it was horrific. In both hospitals, I worked at Al-Aqsa too in December. We saw many cases of hypothermia. So things that are completely preventable, things that are not necessary to see, because you can have shelter, you can have fuel, you can have food. Those are the type of things that are blocked from entering by the Israeli government.
Good. And so thank you for that. I understand that you were blocked re-entry to Gaza. You were planning to go and then they denied you entry. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so August 21st, I was supposed to enter Gaza for my third medical mission. We were supposed to stop at Nasser Hospital and then get assigned to a hospital after that. And August 20th, I was told to arrive in Jordan. Like any other mission, you have to physically be in Jordan and be in Amman. And less than 12 hours before I was supposed to enter, I was told by my NGO that I am denied entry. I simply received my name in red, highlighted in red in an Excel spreadsheet, and it said denied. And myself and another colleague of mine from France, who had also been there previously, both of us were denied. We were given no reason as to why we were denied. There's no appeal process at that time. You're simply told no, and you're not allowed to enter.
Well, thank you. So we're going to talk to Feroz and Mark, to Dr. Sidhwa and Dr. Perlmutter, and then we're going to have some questions for all three of you at the same time. But let me just introduce here. Dr. Sidhwa. Is that sharing, Julie?
Yeah, I can see it.
So,
This is Mimi.
yeah. So Dr. Feroz Sidhwa, trauma, critical care, and acute care surgeon in San Joaquin General Hospital. He also has been in Gaza twice, March, April, and then 2024, and then 2025. And he published, you all might have seen this, the New York Times review, 65 doctors, nurses, and paramedics, what we saw in Gaza. And he spoke with us last year, so Feroz, welcome back. And at the same time, I'm just going to show it in the interest of time to Dr. Perlmutter, hand and upper extremity orthopedic surgeon, North Carolina. He's the president of the U.S. section of the International College of Surgeons. Dr. Perlmutter, I wasn't sure when your first trip was, but you were there again in March 2025, right?
Correct. I was there largely with Feroz on both of the trips. We overlapped a little bit, but largely at the same time.
Right. All right. So I'm going to remove that one, and Feroz is there. Okay. Oh, Julie. Over to you, Julie.
Sorry, my dog was barking. Yeah, Rose. Yeah, I spoke with you earlier this year, and thank you for coming back to speak with us. We wanted to hear about your experiences in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean they're the same as Mimi's and almost the same as virtually everybody's that goes there. Like Mimi mentioned, the overwhelming the huge numbers of children that you see are just completely unusual. And it's true that Gaza is half children, but that doesn't explain the differential of trauma the differential rate of trauma that you see in children compared to any other conflict zone in the world. Um, actually, just to give you an example of I've worked in some tough places before, but I have a friend who's in Gaza right now. His name's Michael Falk. He's an emergency room doctor in New York City. And this guy volunteered. He's a bit older than me. He's in his 60s, but this guy volunteered to be the doctor who runs around with the American Special Forces hunting down ISIS people in Iraq. So he's hardly hardly somebody who's not used to violence and seeing really extreme things. He is losing. He's been in Gaza 1 week and he's completely losing his mind over what he's seeing. He's like, I talked to him extensively before he went over there, and I told him I was like, Mike, you don't understand how bad it is until he's like, yeah. I've seen bad stuff, man. He's just beside himself. He's first, I'm pronouncing 2 or 3 kids dead every day. What the hell's going on in this place? It's genocide that's going on in this place, as you can see it with your own eyes. It's a very difficult place to work, to be, to um it's a hard place to be, honestly. But what you see is what we've written about, like Mimi said, what we've all talked about extensively. You largely see a war on children, uh, which has another name. It's called genocide. But yeah, the healthcare system is under direct attack as well. That's also something that's quite unusual. That's not unusual in wartime, for especially for wars like this. for healthcare to be attacked, because it's like I mentioned, it's largely a war on the civilian population. But it's the extent of the destruction of the healthcare system is completely and totally unprecedented. And I mean this seriously, in human history. There's nothing like this that has ever been done to a healthcare system. Um, it's just utterly shocking. Actually, while Mark and I were at Nasser on March 23rd, I remember the day because it's my sister's birthday. The hospital, Nasser Hospital, was bombed directly by the Israelis. They were very proud of it. They didn't pretend somebody else did it. One of my patients, a 16-year-old boy, was killed, and this is while I was walking down to his room. And not that my life is more important than somebody else's, but it's pretty unusual to be so reckless in your firing of an explosive weapon into a hospital ward that you destroy 25 beds, which is 10% of the hospital's capacity. You kill a 16-year-old boy in his bed, along with a 50-year-old man who happened to be in the room with him, who was the target of the attack. You injure 2 dozen healthcare workers. You injure every patient that was on the ward. And you almost kill an American doctor, because I would have been, if I had gone down to the room, if I had left to go down to his room 3 minutes earlier, I would have been standing right next to him and would have been blown apart with him. Um, so it's these are just all unprecedented things. Um, Alex DeWall has talked about how he's the leading historian of famine in the modern period. He runs the Tufts Institute for World Peace. He's talked about how the famine that we all saw in Gaza, even before the recent reporting on it. We reported seeing widespread malnutrition in the New York Times last October. Um, but basically, everybody who's gone there since November or December of 2023 has seen the same thing. The So, like I said, it's been going on for a while. But what Alex DeWall says in his Times pieces and other pieces is that there are other places where people are starving and there's a famine. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it'd be silly to argue otherwise. But there is nowhere that a famine is being so minutely and deliberately and microscopically engineered as in the Gaza Strip right now. Gaza is a closed concentration camp. There's no other way to describe it right now. Forget the whole strip itself. The population is being concentrated on the beach of Gaza in the tiniest little areas. Most of the population of Gaza right now is being forced into an area that is quite, and I'm not making this up, is the size of LAX, like Los Angeles International Airport. Okay? You're trying to cram 2 million people into this tiny little area that has, according to Oxfam, has 120 toilets in it. There is no infrastructure of any kind. It's actually, the crowding is so bad that the UN just released a flood risk map that shows that about half of the tents in the Mawasi are at risk of flooding when the tides change in the wintertime. This is completely insane. I mean, people are building their temporary shelters in the middle of where the tide is going to come up to in a few weeks. That's the extent of what's being done in Gaza, and the consequences of this are exactly what you would expect, and it's what we see in the hospital. So, um, yeah.
Must be difficult to see.
It's difficult to see, but I have to be honest. For me, I think we've all seen bad stuff in our lives, and none of us are idealists, I guess you would say. Like, we all understand that bad things happen in the world, and bad things are done to children, bad things are done to non-combatants. People, uh, the world can be an ugly place. But I think what kills us, maybe it's a bad choice of words, but I think what gets to us, what strikes at our moral foundation, and then the reason we talk about this publicly, because it's not something any of us are used to doing. Even I still find it uncomfortable, to be perfectly honest. Um, is the fact that we're responsible for it.
Yeah.
Like on Mark and I or actually, Mark, were you still at Aqsa on March 18th? I can't remember. But
I
the
was.
Mark and I were in Gaza on March 18th, and that was the day that the widespread bombing of Gaza resumed. That's when Israel, the ceasefire that was broken. But that day, the first person that I found in the red triage area who could actually live was a little girl. Her name turned out to be Sham. She was 5 years old. She had a shrapnel wound to her left cheek, and the shrapnel had traveled through her brain, and it had hit her left lung and her spleen as well. So we operated on her, and she actually did quite well eventually. But while I was helping her breathe, so that we could take her to the operating room and, get a breathing tube down or things like that, just doing all the stuff that we needed to do to keep her alive, I was holding her jaw open and I was looking at this little trickle of blood coming out of her left cheek. And I was just thinking, like, which American paid for this? Who can I call them and tell them that we found their shrapnel? You know, it's this is outrageous. I mean, like it's not the viciousness of what's being done, at least for me, and I think also for Mimi and Mark and other people as well. It's not the cruelty, it's the fact that we're the ones doing it, and then we're the ones also going there and like kind of absurdly trying to put these people back together after our own money ripped them apart. It's a very weird, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that comes along with it, I guess.
Can
Um,
imagine.
but yeah.
Well,
Okay,
thank you for.
Julie?
So, yeah, I mean, Mark, we saw you where you had been, and the first time that you went to Gaza was where? I think we didn't have that information.
I was with Feroz at the European hospital.
Okay.
The second time I started at Nasser just as a pass through with the intent of going to Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. I stayed there, uh, and planning to stay there for a month to do the reconstructive surgeries from the trauma from the year before, thinking I can, uh, restore function to shredded limbs by rearranging tendons and muscles and fixing bones that haven't healed. And in fact, I had almost 100 kids lined up for surgery with my 3 days of clinic until the 2:30 in the morning, the bomb struck and the ceasefire was broken. And that night, to expand on what Mimi had said earlier, there's a mass casualty event all the time, 1 or 2 times a day. Um, and by a mass casualty event, we mean that I stepped over 30 dying kids so I can get to the 40 that could be saved. I watched them exsanguinate, meaning bleed to death in front of me with missing legs. Um, and and you really do make Sophie's choices sometimes during a mass casualty event. Um, I stepped over men without legs to pick their children that may be savable. The choices that even for us who works in a trauma center, I do not, and Mimi sees this stuff all day. I do not. I live in rural North Carolina and take care of farming injuries and people who thought their neighbor looked like a deer during hunting season and get shot. But I don't do this trauma regularly, and there's enough trauma in any one of these mass casualty events that I would dare say that both of my colleagues wouldn't see that in years of their practice. Um, and so I guess what I'd like to do is take a moment to try to steer conversation because I can't really add to the elegance of what Mimi and scholarly stuff that Mimi and Farouz said. Everybody gets the gist how horrible it is there. Um, I can say that uh, the biggest problem is that we get hung up on the vernacular. It doesn't really matter if we call it a genocide that offends a lot of people. I spoke to the Italian parliament and they were highly offended by the word. And I said, okay, fine. Let's call it a mass pediatric homicide because nobody can deny that. And that's really what Mimi described elegantly, and that's what Feroz just described perfectly. It is a mass pediatric homicide. A child thrown from a second floor window from a bombing is not going to bounce like the adult might. A child with a piece of shrapnel through their lungs is not going to survive that. If that same size piece of shrapnel went through an adult human, where it might actually be slowed up by a thicker rib or more tenacious skin or muscle or thicker clothing. Um, and so and then there's kids that are um, that are just huddled together. Um, Women are huddled together, and we saw quite specifically the drones come out and identify collections of women and children at iftar, the breaking of the fast. We were there during Ramadan, both years that I was there, and then these collections of women and children were in fact targeted, and the effectiveness of a clearly American-made bomb um, on a collection of people is far superior than when they're spread out. And so the timing of the bombing was perfect to institute this mass pediatric homicide, of which the adults were the collateral damage, and of which, even to a far lesser degree, Hamas was a collateral damage. Uh, this is an intended genocide, and we can list forever things that people know, from starting with the World Central Kitchen to the bombing of safe houses. I amputated the leg of a Frenchman who's there disposing of unexploded ordnance, and Israel attacked the safe house, which has the same diplomatic protection as an embassy. They deliberately bombed it to kill these people. Um, Frozen I operated on children that were shredded by American-made Apache helicopter gunships. Um, and one little girl we operated on all night long, she ended up losing all three of her legs, and certainly with the evacuation, she's lost her life. Um, and and that these are not exceptional cases. These are routine traumas where our government is at fault. Indeed, on the night that Feroz described, March 18th at 2:30 in the morning local time, um, the first child that was brought in was relatively local, and he was missing a leg, um, and he was unresponsive and paper white, and he was dying in front of me, if not already dead. Um, and I took his photograph with his mom's permission before she died in front of me. Um, if I could take a photograph to send it to some people I know in America who could make a difference, and she said yes through a translator. Um, that person was somebody who reached out to me. It's Congressman Deir, who was
Mm.
Trump's assistant campaign manager, and I texted him at 2:37. That's how soon after one of the he was the first kid I saw in the ER before, and it was actually before the the 70 kids came in within 20 minutes. Um, and I texted Daryl and I said, you have the power, you have the ear of Trump. You could stop this mass carnage. There's children that are going to be, flooding our ER. Please call and put a stop to this. He gave me an immediate text message back, functionally giving me a verbal equivalent of a middle finger. Um, and and this is a U.S. senator. Right. And then my text back to him was, your return on investment on your self-reported 100% APEC score is pretty high. Um, and then I said, I'm not sure that Yahweh will be as grateful to you someday as Netanyahu is this morning. And and I think that's where the direction really needs to go. I think we need to figure out how we can do something. And that's a critical thing. We all bore witness, and we all are here way out of our element because journalists were not allowed to be there. And our ethical responsibility to society dictates that we have to share the truth because journalists were not there. And with those that were, if they lived through it, would be amazing. Um, you know, Almost 2 decades ago, I was at ground zero on 9/11. I bet you I'm the only living human being who was both in Gaza and on ground zero. And the response after ground zero by the country I love was to assimilate and come together and abhor the violence. And that's what a nation should do in response to an ethical dilemma. Um, Even though I truly think that Israel caused 9/11. But the goal was to motivate us to be anti-Muslim on that day. But regardless of the goal, our country came together. And yet I find it abhorrent that that same ethic cannot be duplicated by the same people, let alone their children, by the same Christian groups in our country. To to recognize this mass pediatric homicide or genocide, whatever you choose to call it, but nobody can deny that there's a mass pediatric homicide going on. And yet we cannot get our society as mobilized to protest that. And that's disturbing to me.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I mean, as you said, it's totally horrific, and the destruction, the genocide, it's unthinkable. And particularly all the children, it hurts. It's so painful to And it must have been extremely painful for you to witness that. And I can't imagine, of course, they're experiencing trauma, but I imagine that it's been traumatic for you all, and of course for the healthcare workers there. Julie, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We'd like to ask the three of you, what has been the response of the different professional associations you belong to
Yeah.
or represent, like the American College of Surgeons, the American College of Emergency Physicians? What has been their response to the destruction of the healthcare system and the abduction of doctors? And what actions do you think they should take? And that's open to the three of you.
I could start it off by telling you that just yesterday I submitted my resignation to the American Medical Association because they refused to publish my now 13th letter to their journal, which is the most common medical journal probably in the world that's distributed. Um, and and I referenced their silence on the event. In fact, Feroz and I wrote a letter to them in March of 2024 while we were there, and they refused to publish a letter or even respond that they got our opinion article. Um, so their silence is the problem. They were silenced during the Holocaust in Germany as well. Um, and my final question to them is, how much Zionist money did it take to unethically purchase your silence on this? That every single member who you service has taken an oath and that you violate that oath as an institution, and therefore I can't
Mm.
be, maintain my membership with you. I am also a member of the International College of Surgeons, and we wrote a position paper against it. Um, and I don't know of another academy. I just spoke to a friend who's a pediatrician who's appealed to the American Academy of Pediatrics, who refuses to take a stand. But I don't know about the ACS or other organizations. I would be
Mhm.
surprised if they did take a stance, to tell the truth.
Well, I think everyone here on this call would commend you for that action. How sad that you needed to do that. Mimi, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so the American College of Emergency Physicians has made a statement about the Ukrainian healthcare workers in 2022. They wrote a statement about supporting the healthcare workers in the Ukraine. But we actually multiple times have approached ASAP, and they have refused to make a statement about Gaza. We asked them to make a statement, just kind of no-brainer statements like, let's not bomb hospitals. Healthcare workers shouldn't be targeted. Food shouldn't be used as a weapon. Mass starvation should not be, weaponized. But we were told on separate occasions, so multiple physicians on different times have actually approached them, and we were told that they don't want to make a political statement, and that they don't want to affiliate themselves with that type of political stance, unfortunately.
But
So.
did you just say that they took a stance against the bombing of Ukraine?
Correct. Yes. So that there is a double standard there, and we've kind of seen it throughout all of our professional organizations. I do think that the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatricians, has actually was the first one. I'm not sure, Feroz, if you know about that, but I think they were the first ones to actually make a statement about the healthcare workers in Gaza. But it's kind of been not very specific. It was kind of like a uniform statement. They have been asked to revise the statement, but they've kind of refused to do that as well.
Yeah, so the I actually wrote a paper that's still pending publication in an America, or in a journal. I think it's going to be published in a British journal because American journals rejected it. But but yeah, so the what we did was look at the biggest medical and surgical societies in the United States and see. We looked at their websites and their X accounts to see if they'd made statements about the targeting of healthcare workers in Gaza versus in Ukraine. And I think about 25% had made statements about Ukraine, and literally one, like Mimi mentioned, the American Academy of Pediatrics had made a statement about Gaza. In the case of it was kind of an interesting thing because this kind of gets to this. Uh, there's this in American I don't know, American culture, or maybe it's just a recent thing, I'm not sure. But if you decide that something is political, whatever this word, this very vague word means, it can just be dismissed as not my problem. Like I don't have to talk about this. I don't have to think about this at all. So just like Mimi said, like a lot of like the American College of surgeons, the American College of Emergency Physicians, almost every American group with more than 10 people in it, made statements about Ukraine that actually, if you read them, they're actually quite inappropriate. A lot of them actually take very clear political stances, very clear determinations of who's right and who's wrong, who's doing this, who's doing that, who's, this and that. Which, it's if people want to make those kinds of statements, fine, but it's very unusual for a medical society to do that. But because the US government and the US, American political elites, whatever you want to call them, were on one side of that conflict, you could say whatever you wanted about the Russian invasion, and it didn't matter. Nobody considered that political. Like the American College of Surgeons, I forget if it was the president at the time when the Russians invaded in February of 2022, or someone else who was high in the organization, but someone who was higher up in the organization made a statement that was really quite outrageous, actually, quite historically inaccurate, quite devoid of any actual moral logic or anything else. But nevertheless, made it. Nobody cared, and everybody moved on with their lives. When it comes to Gaza, all of a sudden it's political. So right now, for example, I'm involved in an effort to get the American College of Surgeons to make a statement about the killing of healthcare workers in both Gaza and Ukraine. And it's very obvious that because we included Gaza, they're refusing. But we've also said that, look, this is not how this organization is supposed to work. This organization, just like the AMA and just like others, has an obligation. You can't bill yourself as being the most important surgical association in the world, and say that you care about healthcare workers everywhere, but then the largest culling of healthcare workers, and especially including, and in fact, in particular, surgeons. Mark knows an orthopedic surgeon whose fingers were broken one by one in an Israeli torture chamber. That's pretty horrifying. That alone should be enough to want to prompt a statement from an American healthcare association like the ACS, but it hasn't been for, again, obvious reasons. Because the issue is not the morality of it, the issue is the politics of it in the end, at the end of the day. It's very easy to take a stand and pretend you're being a big moral actor when you condemn the official enemy. But when you condemn what your own government is doing, which obviously is what somebody who isn't a hypocrite would do, all of a sudden it's a different matter.
I mean,
So
I
we're
think oh, I'm sorry, Faraz, I thought you were done. Go
Go
ahead.
for it. No, no, go for it, bud.
I think a lot of it is, it's important to recognize that a lot of it is based in hatred and racism and Islamophobia. Ukraine is white, and the children of Gaza are not white. AMA actually donated $100,000 in aid to the Ukrainian Medical Society, and actually supported the medical workers to come to the US. So it's not just a statement. It was actually a lot more than that. And they can't even make one simple statement about Gaza or even the children of Gaza. So it's hard to make these type of conclusions without actually mentioning the fact that this is a lot of it based in racism.
I agree with that, but this is a different discussion, but yeah, I think that racism certainly has something to do with it, but I do think that the bigger element is just the fact that Ukraine is on our side and Israel is on our side. So if somebody hurts Ukrainians, it's bad, and if Israel hurts somebody, it's good. It's just a simple calculation that this is how when Russians are also white, but nobody seems to care that they're getting killed. But and plenty of Israelis are brown, and nobody seems to care that they're killing people. But anyway, what I was going to say is that because we can't accept that these organizations, the American College of Surgeons, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, the American College of Emergency Physicians, whoever it is, we can't accept that they can just do whatever they want despite the wishes of their members. So for the ACS, we have a letter signed by 200 fellows of the American College of Surgeons, many of whom are extremely prominent in the surgical community. I won't tell you their names because it's not meant to be a public letter, but the ACS just said no anyway. So we've just said we're not going to accept that. We're going to keep getting signatures on this letter, and we're going to start really interfering with the way this organization works, unless you understand that this is an organization of its members, and its members want this done. And if you are going to claim, you meaning the leadership, if the leadership is going to claim that this is too divisive or okay, fine, but then then you're kind of admitting that there are plenty of people in the American College of Surgeons who don't care if healthcare workers are murdered. Well, that means they shouldn't be members of the American College of of the American College of Surgeons. It's in our bylaws that we're supposed to care about surgeons. So, that's the tact we're taking with it. And in the end, it's kind of funny because it's a similar problem to the problem we have in the United States as a whole. The problem is these are not democratic institutions. And the same thing goes with our country. It doesn't matter if 80% of Americans are opposed to sending more weapons to Israel. It keeps happening anyway, because again, we just don't have a democratic country.
Yeah. Um, Mark, I mean, you've just resigned, I think, from the AMA. Is that it?
Yes.
So what would it look like when Feroz says, we need to interfere with the workings of this organization? What would that look like? I mean, could be more people resigning? Is there some other way to interfere with them?
No, I don't think it would make a difference. You'd have to reach a critical mass, and one thing that hasn't been broached on yet was how much uh, occult or direct Zionist money is given to these organizations. They all have legal teams. Who's paying for them? Um, are these are the donations coming from Weiss? Are they coming from Zuckerberg? Are they coming from the APAC or more the Adelsons? We don't know how much money is going into these organizations to help steer their opinion. And I would bet you it's substantial. What drives public opinion at Columbia University is money. They don't give a hoot about firing a professor or ruining the career of young Columbian students. They care about the money, and they've shown that. In 1936, they fired a full professor and a graduate student because they protested this up-and-coming political party that gave money to senators and to Columbia to buy their opinion, their political opinion, to cover up the atrocities that they were doing in Austria and Germany and harnessing the Roma and the Jews. And because they protested the Nazi Party, they lost their position at Columbia University in 1936, and never reversed that statement even as late as this year. Um, these institutions respond to money, and that money is Zionist money, and Columbia is no different than my academy. They're all whores for the money.
Hmm. I think one of your plural colleagues, Dr. Rupa Maria, was fired from UCSF for
Yeah,
her statement. Yep.
right.
Julie, what do you think? Should we go to Q&A?
I think that'd be great. I mean, I think I do want to hear, like, in your own communities. I mean, could I ask what my
Of
question?
course.
Yes, yes, yes. So I was just wondering about, so you go to Gaza and you come back and you're with your colleagues and in your communities, and like there's lots of different views, right? And people, I don't know. I want to hear about what it's like for you coming back.
Now, for me, coming back wasn't I live I live east of the Bay Area in California I don't live in Stockton, but I basically work in Stockton. It's I live in a Trump county. Uh it's not a particularly like left wing or pro-Palestine place or anything like that. When I told the nurses in the hospital, or when I just told the hospital in general, that somehow it got out, that I was going to go to Gaza, I was actually kind of worried that it was going to be, people were going to say, get upset about it. It was exactly the opposite. People, nobody knows what Gaza is. And where I work, it's not, I work in a place that's very much off the beaten path. They were all like, "Oh God, Gaza, isn't that the place where all those kids keep getting killed?" Yeah, so they all of a sudden everybody was collecting equipment. People were trying to help me take stuff because when Mark and I went the first time, you could still take stuff in through the Rafah crossing. Um, and then when I got back, I actually gave a talk at the hospital, and my chair, the chair of the surgery department, he's an evangelical Christian, right-wing, Trump voting guy, and but he came to this talk, and like when I told him I was going to Gaza, his response was just watch out for those Muslims, Feroz. They can be crazy, but it's what he knew, right? So the when I got back and I gave this talk, Frank came. And he afterwards he said, "Feroz, I had no idea this was what was going on there. This is horrifying." And ever since then, he's kind of done a total 180 on this particular thing. So, I personally have actually only had not only there have been some negative experiences, not in the hospital specifically, um, but I think where I live, people just don't pay any attention to international affairs. Uh, or our involvement in international affairs. And so because of that, uh, they just don't have much of an ideological position in things. And so when a doctor tells them children are being murdered, they say, "Oh, that's bad." Okay.
Yeah.
But I know Mimi and Mark have had very different experiences, and I think theirs are much more typical.
Mimi?
Yeah, so I work in Western Washington, also in a community setting in kind of a rural area. So Olympia is very, very much, aware of what's happening in Gaza. We have the Rachel Corrie Foundation, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yeah, and but Western Washington, where I work, it's very rural. And actually, the first question someone asked me when I got back was, "What part of the U.S. is Gaza in? Is that near Florida?" And so it's a lot of ignorance as to just basic geography. So I couldn't even expect them to know what's happening. But and I had lost a lot of weight because a lot of it was stress, but also there was no food. And so they're like, "Oh, the beach is nice in Gaza. Is that why you slimmed down?" So that kind of conversation was taking place. And so I couldn't expect them to actually understand the gravity of what I saw.
Mm.
But similar to what Feroz was saying, my CEO initially was quite upset that I was gone. I was actually supposed to get a promotion before I left on my first medical mission, and after I came back, he sat me down and he's like, I don't think your work in Gaza aligns with our mission here.
Mhm.
And so, maybe this is not the right step for you to move up. And so I said, okay, and about a week later, I went back to Gaza. But when I came back my second time, he and I had another sit down and he said, I just want to clear the air between us. I just want to know from your point of view, why did you go to Gaza? And I said, well, let me show you. And I literally sat down next to him and I showed him. And this is a very, red area of the state. And I showed him the pictures of the children that I had. One of them was a little girl, Allah. She had half of her skull basically removed from shrapnel and her brain was exposed. And with that same laryngoscope that I had smuggled in, I was able to kind of stabilize her, and she ended up living, and she was talking and walking and everything. And I showed him the videos, and I said, "This is why I went to Gaza." And he was there was tears like falling down into his lap. He couldn't contain himself, and he said, "I had no idea. I had no idea." And I can't believe that, someone like you works at our hospital. We are so fortunate to have you here. Let me help you. And the next week, he actually set up a meeting with myself and Emily Randall, and I spoke to her one-on-one about Gaza. And so I think the overall is support for me personally, as a person, because they know me, they have a relationship with me. But again, it's not necessarily for the larger cause of what's happening, which initially I was a little bit like, well, I want you to care about the kids of Gaza. This is not about me. But I think that eventually it turns into that because it creates awareness and people are more comfortable having conversations. And I do notice that there is a complete shift in the mindset and the perspective of what people think about Gaza now, especially in that community. So,
Mm. Those are such inspiring stories. Mark, I want to let you answer in 1 second, but I want the audience to know that we're going to open this to your questions after Mark speaks. So if you want to be thinking about your question and be ready to post that in chat. But first, we're going to hear Dr. Perlmutter's response to that question.
Uh, my answer is quite similar. We help there one patient at a time, and when we get back, we have to educate our educated colleagues one at a time. As recently as last week, a traveling anesthesiologist wanted to find out because I was dictating a note, probably the one to the AMA, and I was dictating it out loud because I could speak faster than my 70-year-old fingers can type. Um, Unlike Feroz, who's like a machine. And in him hearing me doing voice to dictation, he says, "Well, why are you taking their side? I mean, they beheaded kids, and they advanced all the bullshit that was said on about October 7th, and this is a super educated fellow." And yet but I think that's just a litmus test of society that if our most educated don't take the effort to hear the truth after they read headlines, uh, then the likelihood of people who are less read understanding what's going on is compromised. On a personal note, um, being of Jewish heritage, I had no shortage of death threats. I got calls even when I'm in the operating room with a sound of a pistol cycling and somebody going, if you keep opening your mouth, then the cycling noise of a pistol cycling, and so they range from that to just lack of concern. I've had Jewish members of my family stop talking to me. I've had large communities, pastors in large, expansive southern churches in rural North Carolina, where I live, that have preached about coming to my practice because there's a large evangelical Christian population which donates more money to Israel than the Zionist lobbies do. Um, and I've been told to, by their pastors to abort their plans to keep me as their doctor. So, so it can affect you personally. But largely it's a one-on-one interaction when we try to re-educate those that will take the time to listen. Um, Family members will come around, those that used to be your friends, that were really your friends. If they're gone, then they weren't really your friends. So it was a filter in a sense too. But largely it's to duplicate what my two colleagues said. It's you can you can give a talk, but it's really the personal one-on-one that can change somebody, and we've all done that probably 100 times.
I
Yeah.
do want to say that the death threats are real. I mean, Mark has got them too, but I recently had someone call me and say they're going to send me a pager to Olympia, referring to the pager attacks from Israel.
Right.
And they had my cell phone number. They called my personal cell phone
Oh
number.
my God.
I have three small kids, and I had to go to their school and get extra security and put the administration on alert. I mean, these are scary things, and most likely they are cowards. They're not going to do anything. But um, if it was just me by myself, maybe I wouldn't care so much. But I have very small children, and
Right.
and so these things kind of they do scare us, and they're unfortunate. And what are we doing? We're saving children, and we're getting death threats for it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the three of you are so incredibly brave, and I mean, we're just so in awe of what you're doing and grateful for what you're doing. We have actions that we can take here, and particularly because, as all three of the physicians said, um, that the U.S. is complicit and we are supporting this genocide. Cole, do you want to speak to that? I put the link in the chat and just wondering if you want to say something to people about that.
Sure, and I'll also share just to show you what it looks like. So we have a Block the Bombs Act in Congress that would uh, cut off seven of the most deadly forms of weapons the United States is sending to Israel. That bill is actually moving in the House. We have 47 co-sponsors, not nearly enough to pass the bill, but a greater number that have ever um, signed on to block military aid to Israel before. So we're seeing some progress. We have seven new co-sponsors in September alone. And this
Yes, Lord. Indicator.
letter that you can fill in, you send it to your member of Congress and make it known to them that they should support that act. So that's the Block the Bombs Act. And it's the primary way we can advocate in Congress right now to take action.
It's really important because this act will not pass. There's absolutely no way it will. But getting Congress people to sign on is going to be kind of a litmus test for future elections. Because the people, again, you folks probably know better than I do, but the in the Senate, the similar bill that was voted on in the Senate recently, more than half of Senate, no Republicans signed it, but more than half of Senate Democrats did. Um, and this is a really, really important thing to keep pushing because even just a year ago, the number was six, right? Like it was six or seven when Bernie Sanders introduced the same thing, actually, which was more restrictive in the Senate at that time. So now it's about half of Democrats. Not enough to change things, but these things take a long time, and a lot of you are probably old enough to know or to remember how the anti-apartheid struggle shook out. It takes a very long time to move our political leaders, precisely because of what I said earlier. We don't really have a democratic country, but nevertheless, we have to keep trying because the only way to stop this is to change things here.
Change that to ibuprofen
Thank you.
800 milligrams.
Cole, thank you. Do you want to stop your share, Cole? Thank you. So we put the link in the chat. And now we have some time to ask some questions from the audience. Julie, do you see anything there?
Yeah, I do. I think this would go really well with talking about Block the Bombs Act. Uh, Mark, this is to you. Would you comment on the U.S. Congress being the largest occupied territory?
It is. I mean, it's not measured by square miles. I mean, the West Bank would be considered that, followed by Golan Heights, followed by Gaza. It's not the physical dominance, um, but this is all about wealth. When Netanyahu showed when he spoke to the UN last, the map of Israel, he showed a map of what he interpreted to be Greater Israel, including portions of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all of Jordan, Iraq, um, and as they defined Greater Israel, and it's all about the money. Um, it includes every freshwater supply in the Middle East. It includes the $2 trillion worth of natural gas fields off of Gaza City, which is really why they want that. Um, um, this is all a financial play, and um, and so the most occupied territory is where the money is controlled, and that territory is the U.S. Senate. The first just mentioned that only 50% of Democrats responded, and that's a big improvement. But that means that 50% are still, uh, taking the knee to AIPAC and other sources of Zionist money. And notice I'm not saying Jewish money. There's a distinction between Judaism and Zionism. They're taking Zionist money. They're prostitutes being bought. Their vote is being bought. Their resistance to signing a bill that is selectively focusing on the mass destruction of a population is only because they've taken that money and they intend to keep taking that money. Um, so it is the largest occupied territory because that's the concentration of the wealth. We are 100% responsible as a government for this murder. In 1982 or 84, I think it was 82, Reagan stopped the bombing of Lebanon with one telephone call. And that telephone call could never happen with any of our last five presidents because they were all bought and sold for. Biden proudly said, after he took his, $200 million, I am a Zionist. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just to say that we are very clear and we are continually making the distinction between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionist or anti-Israel policies. We are continually making that point. And anti-Zionism, and criticizing the policies of the state of Israel does not equal anti-Semitism. We are continually saying that.
And just to, Abby, sorry not to interrupt you, but just to emphasize what you just said, not only is criticizing the policies of Israel not anti-Semitic, it's not even necessarily anti-Zionist. I mean, there are plenty of people who are criticizing the policies of the state of Israel because they think it's suicidal for Israel. So if you're it's not either or. It's kind of a ridiculous claim. If somebody says the US shouldn't have invaded Iraq because it was bad for the United States, that's hardly an anti-American statement. It's just completely silly. For some reason, as soon as somebody mentions anti-Semitism, people's minds turn off, but that's a major mistake. We have to think harder than that.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. There's a question here. We know that the UN General Assembly is meeting this week and last week and this week. And so it says here that the nations of the global south are uniting to intervene to stop this genocide. Do you see how citizens in the US can also make that happen or can join what the citizens of the global south are doing?
Yeah, by getting control of our own country.
Right.
Again, I can't emphasize enough the reason that the United States, and I know everybody uses the term complicit, but it drives me nuts. I can be complicit in your crimes, but if we co-conspire to commit crimes, I'm not complicit. I'm just committing crimes. We are the ones that are committing crimes. It's American planes dropping American bombs with American guidance systems, using American intelligence and powered by American jet fuel. It just happens to be an Israeli pilot flying them. That's what's going on in Gaza. This is an American operation through and through. If it's because of Zionist money or whatever else, that's a different matter. But it's an American operation through and through. And if we had a democratic country, it wouldn't be happening because the large majority of Americans want nothing to do with this. So the fight to get control of the US government and to bring it under democratic control, I don't mean big D, I mean small d democratic control, uh, is not only a fight uh, to save Gaza, but it's a fight to save our own country. I was born here. I grew up here. Mimi and Mark, I think you both did too. Or you both were too. There is no reason that the United States has to be involved in this. This is the only culture I know. English is the only language I speak with any competence. I want this country to be a better place because it's my home. And I want my government to stop forcing me to act like a murderer, which I am. I'm the one that's killing these kids. You're the one that's killing these kids. And I don't want to. So we have to do something about that. And
The
so
major.
What?
no, go for it.
Go finish. I was just saying neither party is interested in what mainstream America wants, right?
Right.
Neither party is. I think that the popularity is that we don't want to do this. I think most Americans agree that what we're doing is wrong. What's happening in Gaza is wrong, but it's completely a different world in our government. It's not representative of what we need and what we want. I think that's the frightening part. That's the part that really should strike people and get people's attention.
Yeah. On this issue, we don't have two parties. We have one political party. It's the Zionist Party. Um, and we have people who are bought and paid for to do it. There's multiple Democratic and Republican issues, of course, and people differ on that. Um, but on this issue of Palestine, we have one political party.
Yeah. There's somebody here on the phone, and maybe you can't type in your question. Oh, he went away.
But
She.
then I'm just going to finish one comment. When you look at somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, a penultimate progressive, he took $500,000 of AIPAC money. I have a photograph as my bookmark in my Bible of him shaking Netanyahu's hand. Um, why is he silent, do we think, on the issue of the mass pediatric homicide? He'll criticize the world for taking the knee on the floor of the Senate, for taking the knee to Trump on Trumpian issues. But he takes the knee to Netanyahu. And it's only for a stinking $500,000. And he's in a very secure district. The chances of him being unseated are almost zippo. And yet, there's no reason for him to take money to reinsure his election, but that would be the only reason why he would do it. And they purchased his silence, one of the most progressive there is.
Yeah. Um, the caller at number 773, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Let's see, can I do that?
Hi, hi. Yeah, it's not just a matter of money. APAC can destroy candidates through their publicity. Um, excuse me. Do you remember Senator Adlai Stevenson? He was
Yeah.
a senator in Illinois years ago, right? He during the middle of campaign, APAC put out, it was essentially a hush campaign. It was a hush campaign. It was like behind the scenes. They were saying, oh, Adlai Stevenson, he's anti-Semitic and he's anti-Israel. Blah blah. This is when he was running for governor against Jim Thompson.
Right.
And there were a lot of people, a lot of Democrats who would have ordinarily supported Stevenson. They crossed over and supported Thompson. Thompson was essentially a very moderate Republican, but anyway, they supported Thompson because they saw Stevenson as anti-Semitic, and I remember questioning him about it. He said, "I know, I really resent it. It's so unlike the Jewish people." What's ironic about it, he had already gotten a special award from another Jewish organization, B'nai B'rith, for outstanding public service. So
I'm
when he
sorry,
was hit with these
I'm gonna interrupt you. I'm sorry, because there are people who have a question for our
Okay,
first speaker, so thank you for your comment. Julie, do you see the question from Colleen?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so I'll ask it. She's asking, are there any suggestions for us to call members of Congress? Yes, Colleen, we just put the block the bombs in the chat. She says, do you find that focusing on children helps engage them? Oh, you mean members of Congress? Well, I think the physician spoke to the fact that, particularly Feroz and Mimi, that when you spoke like to the director of your hospital, and Feroz, you spoke to some people and you showed them the pictures that they learned something that changed their minds, right?
Yeah, and I mean most people, there are, like I don't know what's that fellow's name in New York, Richie Torres. There are some people like him who just seem to be deeply committed to this completely insane project of destroying the Palestinians. But uh, most people, I think, including most Republicans, including even most, corporate or right-wing Democrats, whatever you want to call them, most people are not willing to countenance the murder of children no matter where they are, no matter what they look like, no matter what religion they have, no matter what language they speak, they're really not willing to do that. And it's very, very hard. Like Mimi showed her CEO. You said that one video of a kid with their skull blown off, and they just couldn't. Well, who on earth would do this? Who on earth would act like this? And once people realize that they're the ones doing this, it's very easy to show them that they shouldn't be. So yeah, and it's and I was just at Georgetown the other day, and somebody in the audience said, there's this unfortunate thing where people say women and children as if because it implies that every man who's been killed in Gaza is somehow deserving of it, and that shouldn't. I hope nobody thinks that should not be anyone's interpretation. It's an unfortunate shorthand that it's easy to say women and children uh, as a shorthand for the innocents, but even the men being killed in Gaza, we know from 972 magazine in Israel, the men being killed in Gaza are overwhelmingly civilians as well. But but yeah, focusing on children, I think it's a very easy way to pull at people's heartstrings and make them see what's actually going on. Not an easy way, I shouldn't say it that, but it's a good way of convincing people of what's going on. And again, it's
Having
very, very hard to countenance what's being done to the kids there.
It's
having
also, it's not just children either. It's also what's being blocked and taken away from them, right? That
Yeah.
you can't really justify baby formula being blocked or like medical supplies to save lives being blocked, medications to be like, what's Hamas going to do with
Toys,
medications or
literally plastic
chemotherapy?
toys.
Exactly. Chocolate. Chocolate is
Yeah.
actually you have to smuggle chocolate in. So it just seems like illogical when you tell someone this, they can't, they're like, what? You can't, why can't you bring that in? And so it makes them question diapers. So as a mom, as someone who has small kids, if you tell a parent that they can't bring diapers in, I mean, they're just like immediately they're what? Why can't you bring diapers in? Like, how do you even
Or
function with a baby if
or
you have diapers?
tampons, right?
Yeah, or
Or
tampons or maxi pads, right? Yeah, maxi pads. Yeah, exactly.
so to interpret that question a little bit differently, I would say that we can approach our colleagues, like Feroz had mentioned and Mimi had mentioned, but you cannot effectively approach our congressmen. All of us have been in DC several times, going door to door to door, willing to show people who were accepting APAC money the evils of their ways. And not one of us had a meaningful meeting there. We've got largely blown off. Um, and I know this happened to Mimi and it's happened to me. My own local senator and congressman refused to meet with me either in DC or in district. And Mimi's written about it quite heroically and elegantly. And exposing them is really the only way of doing it. Appealing to them, showing them pictures of dead babies or mangled or burned or shredded babies would only work if they're willing to see them. They're not. They put things on a scale in their head. On one end of that scale is the carnage that I know I've seen because my staffers have shown it to me. On the other end of the scale is that's a shitload of money that can guarantee my reelection. And they're all tilting towards the money. So I think the rate of difference, we simply have to expose them. And we have to expose them as the prostitutes that they are, that they are taking money and that they're voting in accordance with the wishes of the donors of that money, and they don't care that a dead baby's at the end of that formula. They don't care that a family's been shredded. They'd rather have the money. And that's why the vote changed from six a couple years ago to 50 for the anti-bombing measure. Uh, and hopefully it'll be two-thirds of it by next year. But that's only because those who took the money this year are in fear of being discovered that they're still taking APAC money. So we have to make that the fear. We have to let them know that if you take this money, you will lose your job, in spite of the potential that that will help you get reelected. The grassroots effort to expose your prostitution and your culpability in voting for the death of children will unseat you, regardless of the dollars that you take.
Mark, you had a pretty snazzy slogan there, which is I can see that Apex investment, Apex are the ROI on Apex investment in you is being you are carrying it out.
Right, it's a business deal.
Yeah.
I said that to Daryl Isa, the ROI, the financial return on investment, was 100%. Daryl Isa told me on a telephone call he was proud of his 100% APEX score. They score people. He has a 100% APEX score and he's had it for 10 years.
Yeah.
He also was proud of the quote unquote benefits he received on his two paid trips to Jerusalem every year. What are those benefits he spoke of?
Yeah.
Were they the same benefits that he was trying to float to me by calling me that night?
Mm.
He called me. I didn't call him. So, um, would you like to know about these benefits?
Yeah. Julie,
I
there's
just sorry, can I just add something to do you have time? The the just so everybody understands, the only I think this is what Mark was saying, but just to be clear, the only reason half of Senate Democrats voted for block the bombs is because of popular pressure, just like Mark said.
Right.
The only reason a few Democrats have come, actually not a few, quite a few now, have come out and said that they will no longer accept money from the Israel lobby. That is shocking. I mean, that would have been denounced widely as anti-Semitism just a few years ago. That is a huge change, but it's only a change because, what is it? The latest poll showed like 7% of Democrats are have a favorable view of Israel now. That's pretty shocking. I mean, it was 85, 90% just a few years ago. So the Democratic Party can see the writing on the wall in that regard, or at least the smarter people there can. But they're right now, exactly like Mark said, they're torn between the money on one hand and the vast overwhelming majority of Democratic opinion on the other. We have to keep pushing to that strength that we have, which is that the entire Democratic Party, and in fact the entire country, is on our side. And if you don't get in line, you meaning your congressman or your senator, it's not going to matter how much money AIPAC pumps into your campaign. Someone will primary you and you will be thrown out and you'll be done. These are the things that like we have to, those are the levers that we can push on and we really have to push on them.
Right. So there are several questions which I want to be sure that you have time to answer the audience questions. Julie, there's a question from Bill Lyons.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Um, so have you, when you were there, did you see any Gazans with any sense of hope? And it seems to me that another of Israel's intent is to kill hope.
Right. 100% showed hope. Would you two agree with that? I
Yeah,
mean, there's
shockingly.
despair. There's
Hmm.
despair, but they love their land. You can remove their limbs with a bomb or a sniper rifle. You can kill 90% of their family member, but you can never take away the dignity of a Palestinian. You can't amputate that. You can't psychologically traumatize them to lose it. Their dignity is what drives the society. That is what makes them want their land. It makes their family units the most extensive, loving family units I've ever seen in my life. And I've done surgery on 4 continents, and you know, um, the truth of it is, the most dignified people in the most horrid conditions I have ever seen in my life. The one thing that flies higher than anything is their dignity. Um, and that drives their hope.
And kindness, I
Oh,
think one of the things that I noticed when I was first there, we all get vests when we go with our NGOs, and mine had a big American flag on there. And I was actually kind of scared to wear it at first because I'm like, oh, that's who's supplying the bombs. I wouldn't want to walk around with this American flag. And I was walking around like in the encampments with it. And I can't tell you, people stopped me and thanked me for being there and showing solidarity with them. A woman stopped and said, "Thank you for coming here and leaving your kids and safety to sit here with us. When we see you, we have hope." And those were dire conditions that were, I mean, literal bombs dropping around us, the food's being blocked, and they're saying that to me in American. So it's just kindness is like through the roof. I've never experienced this amount of kindness and just unconditional acceptance that I have when I was in Gaza.
Yeah. When I was in the West Bank, the first time or I guess, yeah, the first time I actually lived in the West Bank, it was just 6 weeks or 7 weeks after my first year of med school. Um, And I remember there was this is in Hebron, there was a young boy at Ahli Hospital who had been shot through the eye and through the left side of his brain. He actually survived, thankfully. But um, I went with one of the residents, one of the surgery residents, to talk to his dad, and they were speaking in Arabic, so I couldn't understand them. But I heard, I speak or I could understand enough that I at some point the guy said, "Who's this guy?" Meaning me, and the resident said that his name is Feroz. He's a medical student from the United States, and I thought to myself, "Oh my God, why did he tell him I'm an American? He's going to be so angry. He's going to say, 'Why did you pay for my son to be shot in the head? You're a bunch of savages.'" He just said, "Ahlan, it's just welcome." You know, why am I welcome here? It doesn't make any sense, but at the same time, it does because it's the culture. And the Palestinians have been abandoned by the governments of the entire world, or at least the entire Western world and the entire Arab world, but not by the people of the world, and especially not by the people of the Arab world. And they are very, very, somehow they're still very easily able to distinguish between those two things. I've had literally he was a 16 or 17-year-old kid get upset when I told the Palestinian kid get upset when I told him I was American. And as soon as I said, this is when Bush and Sharon were in power, as soon as I said, Bush and Sharon are crazy, he was like, oh, Oh, okay, never mind. You're
Mhm.
good here. You know,
The,
and Mark, like Mark, you had similar experiences telling people you're Jewish, you're American. Like it's not they just that's not what they care about at all.
no.
They just want their kids to stop being killed.
No, the best story that I have showing affection for their future and hope for their future was I took the testimony of this eyewitness of an Israeli IDF team that buried two children and their adult male alive with their hands tied behind their back in a mass grave on hospital property when the IDF had taken over the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. And that grave has since been exhumed. But so we went into the houses that bordered that, just 10 meters away, 10 yards away, and we interviewed them to get a statement for the International Criminal Court. And it was witnessed by several people of our team and with translators. And one of the doctors that was with us was actually a lawyer in Ireland as well as a vascular surgeon. Um, and so we got it translated, and sure enough, these two children were exhumed, and there were the two kids that were pushed in alive, whose screams were muffled by the dirt that was falling upon them. And I asked this guy at the end of his testimony, "How does that make you feel?" As we were walking out, and he was greeting us in his house, um, and he said, "It gives me hope." And then we turned around. A lot of people turned around. Um, and I said, "Hope for what?" He goes, because they died for us. Uh, they are our martyrs, um, and they will give us strength to rebuild." Um, and he's referencing kids that he saw get buried alive and saw get exhumed, um, and and still looked at them as inspiration for his future in his own land.
Hmm. These are such horrific stories. I still would like to get to a few more questions. Julie, there's one from Maggie. Do you see it?
I did see it before, but I don't see it now.
I can read it. She's asking, do you
Yeah.
think women and children
Oh,
are
yeah.
being targeted to erase the next generation?
Sure.
I mean, I think we'd all agree the answer is yes, but
Yep.
it's not a you know, we're just sitting in the hospital and we get the casualties that come to us. We're not like investigators doing investigations. There's any number of human rights reports about this now. I mean, there are multiple cases. Like Mark, just that story you have about the father who was holding his child and then he was hit by a bullet. He fell out of his arms and he thought he had just dropped him. But you know, this is a grown man carrying a small child. The child is shot in the head and then the child on the ground is shot in the chest or the other way around. I can't remember. This grown man is standing that he was holding the kid. You can't argue that the kid was shot by accident if he was shot twice and the father was not shot at all. It's completely outrageous. We've heard multiple. I think again, I don't want to speak for you guys, but we've all heard stories about quadcopters descending. Quadcopters are these Israeli. They're kind of like they're a little bit bigger than the drones that you would buy for your kids, so they can just go play with it. But some of them have guns mounted to them, and these quadcopters just kind of swooping down, shooting two or three children, and disappearing like within the span of a second or two. It's pretty hard to argue they weren't targeted. There were adults around. They just weren't shot. We wrote about this in the New York Times in October of last year that 80 something percent of American healthcare workers who've worked in Gaza regularly saw young children shot in the head or the chest. Um, if you compare the killing of children on a per capita basis between Gaza and Ukraine, I forget the exact numbers now, but I think the killing of children is something like 150 times higher. The rate of killing of children is something like 150 times higher in Gaza than it is in Ukraine. How can you explain these differentials without saying that they're being targeted? And furthermore, you don't even have to ask the question in general because now Israeli soldiers have talked to journalists, especially Haaretz and 972 magazine, explicitly saying that that's what they've been doing. And the 972 magazine has done this did a long actually a series of investigative reports on the what's called the overall targeting system that the Israelis are using is an AI augmented program called Lavender. But something that maybe people have missed in that, because it's such a horrifying story overall, there's kind of a sub part of it, like a sub program. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but the part of this uh, system is an algorithm that decided that it's best to kill Hamas militants or alleged Hamas militants, suspected, whatever you want to say, when they go home. Well, who else is going to be at home? Well, you can tell who else is going to be at home by the name that the designers, not me, gave this program. It's Wayne Baba. That means where's dad? In other words, it's named from the standpoint of the children that they know full well are going to be killed when airstrikes are carried out on these people's homes. So it's totally impossible to claim that they're not being targeted. I mean, it's deliberate. It's all perfectly out in the open. It's hardly it's not even a secret. It's denied in the Western press. I actually just today because for a different reason I searched the New York Times archive to see if they've ever mentioned this, and they haven't. It's never once been mentioned.
Yep.
It's pretty
It's
shocking,
not just
but it's not hidden.
yeah, and it's not just military, right? We're not just talking about military insults, but this is also like baby formula. Again, go back to baby formula, prenatal care. Who suffers first with starvation? It's the babies, right? I just saw an image today of like, I think it was like 12 babies, like in the NICU, just dead. Like their first less than a week old, all died or miscarriages by miscarriages. So who is that affecting? That's affecting the birth rate. Those are children, those are babies. That is the target. It's not just by guns or shrapnel, but it's also this deliberate, like systematic starvation and destruction.
Right. I wonder if we can get one more in here. Julie, there's one from Mary Olson.
Yeah, I was looking at this question
Go
from,
ahead, whatever you want.
okay. Um, how do you envision any future contributions of doctors and healthcare workers in Gaza, given the current dire situation and inability to access Gaza?
Hmm. Well, I'm not sure that Gaza is going to exist as we knew it when we were last there. The northern part of Gaza will be annexed by Israel. The only people that can stop that is our U.S. Senate, and they're feckless. Um, and so Gaza won't exist as we know it. The carbon fields in the Mediterranean will assure that they want the money from that. Um, the the healthcare system is poised to take over. There's hospitals in Jordan on trucks ready to come in. There's many hundreds of volunteers that will pour in if there's a facility for us to work. Um, the medical community will respond. But it's going to be difficult. We're trying to get doctors out of hospital. We've gotten placement for Gazan medical students in Canadian and American schools. Um, we've got their tuition paid for, but the IDF won't grant them visas to leave. Um, the pediatric orthopedic surgeon, the only pediatric orthopedic surgeon in all of Palestine, is not allowed to leave, and he's suffering from heart disease in his mid 40s, um, and had a heart attack, and we can't get him out, even though the WHO through the Italian government raised him to the number one on the evacuation list. The IDF still says no to his evacuation. Um, recreating the medical system and the structure of it is going to be difficult. There's the personnel, but it took, and Frost is as close to an expert on this as I've ever seen. It took decades, um, many decades, to build the elegant infrastructure that they had. Um, I've heard Frost say in another talk that the Al-Shifa hospital that was destroyed and was built by Israel and destroyed by them thoroughly and deliberately, with full intent of never having it to reopen. Um, if it was in California, and correct me if I'm wrong, Feroz, would be the seventh biggest hospital in California.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was a mega medical center for which all the cancer treatment and the complicated cases went. Their orthopedic surgeon was world renowned. He can take a job as the chair of any teaching hospital in the United States had he not died in an Israeli prison in custody. Um, so, and currently, chairs of pediatric departments are still in custody. We moan the 100 plus hostages of Israeli descent that Hamas has control over. But the average person doesn't know there's 10,000 hostages in Israeli prisons, of which at least 450 are medical personnel, none of which have charges against them.
Yeah.
And those 10,000 plus hostages are there without charges, without recourse. A friend of mine was beaten every time he asked to speak to his lawyer. He was beaten 3 times harder if he did speak to his lawyer. He was sexually violated by female IDF soldiers with zucchinis soaked in pork blood. Um, and any possible way to humiliate him psychologically was accomplished, even showing him pictures taken by Israeli spies in real time, geotagged and timed, saying, "This is your wife. We will bring her in front of you and rape her in front of you if you don't tell us where Hamas is hiding in your hospital." And uh, I have personally never seen a single person who would ever qualify as Hamas in my 2 trips there. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but it's not like they're walking around in uniform. We just have never seen them. And I went into the subways underneath of Al-Aqsa and in Nasser Medical Complex. There's no ability um, for soldiers to hide underneath of those hospitals. Um, so, um, there has to be a physical infrastructure. It may not even be in Gaza. It's wherever the diaspora ends up settling. Uh, but the personnel will be there. The infrastructure has to be reconstructed.
We want to honor your time, and we're so appreciative of your being here and telling us, sharing witness with us. There is an important question here, which is what is the best nonprofit to contribute directly so that it's not diverted? Do you have a suggestion for us?
It's really nothing really is getting into Gaza right now, so it's very hard to know who you can give money to. Right now, UNRWA has enough food within, you could throw it into Gaza. But the Israelis are blocking it, and the demand is that they remove their branding from it. Like just that that's literally what they're insisting, that the name UNRWA just be taken off of every package. It's completely ridiculous. The the World Health Organization has there's everybody who wants to feed or clothe or shelter or treat or anything, anybody in Gaza has all the stuff they need a few miles away from Gaza. It's all saying some of it's actually sitting within Gaza, but in the Israeli controlled parts of it. That's why when they say, oh, 300 trucks, 400 trucks, they went into staging areas in Gaza where the Palestinians are not allowed to go. So it's very hard to know who you can donate to. I'm sure Mimi and Mark have names, but what I would just encourage everybody to understand is that it's my personal opinion. I can't say it's correct, but in my personal opinion, your money would be better spent on efforts to change the way the U.S. government works. And we should not hesitate to spend our money on that. If we can eventually stop the U.S.'s support for what is going on, that is worth 10 bazillion trucks of flour, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agreed with that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think all our efforts should be, towards our own government. There are, however, good organizations that do work on the ground. I know Heal Palestine, Steve Sosebee, he does very good work with children for medical evacuations, and recently was kind of targeted in the U.S., but he continues to do work. I work with him personally and talk to him, and I know the work that he's doing, and it's phenomenal. And he's been doing it for decades. So Heal Palestine is great. Any of the organizations really that are on the ground, those are reputable organizations.
True statement.
Sosebee, how do you spell it? I follow him. How do you spell his name?
Steve
Sosebee? Yeah.
Sosebee, yeah. Yeah, Sobee, I think.
something like that.
Yeah,
If you Google HEAL,
there it
HEAL,
is. Yep,
Palestine.
there it is. So that's, you got it in the comments I just saw.
Yeah, I just put that. So, lastly, is there anything, somebody's asking, is there anything that we could be doing for you personally?
Yes. Do me a very personal favor. Contact your legislature and tell them that you will actively work your butt off to unseat them if they've taken APAC money, and then do so.
Yeah.
Agreed. Shame the people that are taking APAC money. I mean, honestly, that's the point at which I agree 100% with Mark on that. We have to shame them. We have to call them out.
Write letters to the editor. Just say, Deir took $2 million in his lifetime of APEC money, and he's directly responsible, in my opinion, you have to say, in my opinion, for the murder of children.
Yeah. Well, our hearts break for the people of Gaza, for the healthcare workers, for the targeting of them, for the killing and abducting of them. Our hearts break for Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who's been abducted for about 60 days. Our hearts go out to the three of you for the amazing work that you have done and that you continue to do, and that you're speaking out so forcibly. Also, we want to honor the fact that, of course, 15,000 or so children, but also women and men have been killed in Gaza. It's not just the children. We want to honor all of them who have been killed. We are so grateful to you. Julie, did you want to add any last comment?
No, I'll just agree with your gratitude to the doctors here, and then also for showing us how it is such a political structure. It's such a global structure. We need to fight this here at home.
Yeah, pediatric mass suicide, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Don't go yet, the three of you, because I want you to see everyone here thanking you for speaking with us. So, audience, we would like to see your appreciation in whatever ways you would like to express that. You can come off mute. You can type it in chat. How do I do that? Can you put it, and then, Cole, are they unmuted? Just, can you all come off mute and give your...
Sorry, I have to let them on mute. Where's the thing for that?
It's okay, guys. We've
Okay,
received plenty of
they
thanks
can
from
now
plenty of
unmute.
people.
Okay.
Can you shout out your thanks to them and give them a round of applause, please?
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank
you
So
so
you.
much.
grateful.
It
Thank
was
you.
a phenomenal presentation, yes.
Hey,
So sad and yeah, lovely of you to do your.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
Thank you.
I hope we could speak in the future because I really want to help out on this.